Hello and welcome back. We're here at Microsoft Ignite NZ.
Sunny New Zealand, sir.
That's right. We're here in springtime, which is fantastic because we're coming out of the ugly fall in Seattle. It's so good to be here with you, my friend.
I think I'll still go skiing this weekend, man. We've got like one weekend left.
Awesome. So I'm here with Chris Auld. Tell us about who you are, what you do now, but we want to get into like the details of the journey. Tell us about who you are.
So I am I'm the new DX lead for Microsoft New Zealand. So DX Developer Experience, the entity previously known as Developer and Platform Evangelism. And I am an evangelist at heart.
Fantastic. So tell us about how you started, because you were telling me stories of like a long time ago of your sort of relationship with Microsoft and its technology, and so how you came to this place.
So in my sophomore year at high school, I was lucky enough to win a copy of Windows 95.
How'd you manage that?
I went to a Windows 95 launch event. It was, I mean, they had like the Rolling Stones launching Windows 95. So I won this copy of Windows 95. I installed it on my 486DX266. I think I had a 20 gigabyte hard drive if I was lucky. And that's probably the start of my journey with Microsoft.
So that's interesting because I started like around the same time. I had a DX4100. That was my thing, and I remember, just like you, really excited to install new software. I must have been 14 years old, 15 years old. Tell us about the journey after that, because it's that progress, so that people, if they're interested or excited about.
So I went to university in a place called Dunedin, a traditional university, big covered in ivy sort of
Nice.
carry on.
Yeah.
And I started out studying computer science and management.
Nice.
And I finished neither of them. So about my third weekend, I decided the computer science and the undergraduate management just didn't really float my doing a thing called information science, which we'd now think of as data science. Way back before it was as trendy as it is now.
Awesome.
And then my dirty little secret, Seth, is I am a trained lawyer.
Oh.
So we can call that my undergraduate degree in sort of management by example of what not to do.
Right.
And argumentation.
Oh, that's awesome. So you went to school in the south of New Zealand. Yeah. You've been in New Zealand your whole life.
I have. So born in New Plymouth. So if you look at New Zealand on the map, it's that little bump on the western side of the North Island. So born in New Plymouth, school in Wanganui, went down to university in Dunedin. And in the start of my first year of college, I found a job advertised at Student Job Search for an industrial computer program.
Wow. What does that even mean?
Well, so I wrote the systems that make a whole bunch of sulfuric acid at the fertilizer works.
Wow.
I wrote the systems that make the caramel that goes on top of the Cadbury Morrow bars, which are a particularly famous and popular chocolate
It's
bar.
kind of like a complete opposite, right? It's like you make sulfuric acid or the chocolate bars. How tasty.
You don't want to mix them up.
No, you don't.
Mix them up. And so that really plugged me into the developer community. So I was doing a lot of work in VB3, VB4, VB5, VB6.
Right.
In fact, I still got some friends who work in VB6.
Yeah, it's
It's still a pretty popular stack. And it meant I got to come to Microsoft TechEd, or what Ignite was called back then. Being a young whippersnapper student, you kind of, as Don Osaka would say, hustle the humans. And so I hustled. I hustled pretty hard and got to know the DX lead back then, a guy called Tony Ward. And he sort of had this genesis for what has gone on to become the Microsoft Student Partner Program. So to basically find some Microsoft advocates amongst the student community.
Sure.
So I sort of put my hand up for that, gave me an Xbox, and I was a really strong and passionate advocate for Microsoft through my time at college.
So you started as an MSP in college then?
I did. So I was again, it wasn't called that then, because I think there might have been two of us. I think there was only one of us, and that was me.
Wow.
But it's now turned into that MSP program, and the MSPs have been fantastic here.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've been helping out here at Ignite all this week.
Absolutely, we have some wonderful MSPs helping us actually right now.
There's one
she's smiling at me right now because she knows if it wasn't for her, we'd be a hot mess. Okay, so thanks to the MSPs. And so you were one of the first of that style of sort of partners from
Yeah, and then I managed to become an MVP, and I was an MVP for Windows Mobile.
Wow.
Back, if you remember Windows Mobile.
Yeah, the compact iPac Plus.
I had the third ever compact iPac in New Zealand.
Why?
Behind the two
awesome.
guys at HP New Zealand. And so I was on, and I had a US robotics Palm Pilot before that.
Oh my goodness!
Not the Palm Pilot, the US robotics Palm Pilot.
Oh my goodness! Those are. I'm like you're like taking me back because I think we might be around the same age, and so all of the technology that sort of you grew up with, I feel like even though you were literally on the other side of the planet, like our progression through technology was literally the same, and so it's kind of cool to remember.
I mean, it was a pretty cool time.
Yeah.
It was the early days of innovation. It was a little slower.
Sure.
A little more monochrome.
Yeah, monochrome. Yeah.
But it was fun. I mean, I managed my college calendar on my Palm Pilot. And now I run my entire life out of Outlook. And I think, a lot of people around the world do.
So tell us a little bit sort of about that transition from MSP to MVP. Was it just like a natural thing that happened when you graduated? Did it happen while you were in college?
It may well have happened while it was around that time. So again, it just comes down to, plugging yourself in aggressively into the community. I was blogging, I was, doing presentations, getting out there and being an active participant in our community. I actually spent some time with all of my MVP peers, because I'm an MVP until the 1st of January.
Yes, because you've got some time. In fact, MVP Summit's coming up pretty soon. Are you going to be able to go to that?
I'm not. No, that's my first. I got my first event with partners here in New Zealand. I've got an event that week, unfortunately.
Awesome.
But I got to spend some time with our MVPs. Having breakfast this morning, it's really great to have a community, a really diverse community of excited people.
So you went from also MVP to RD, and for some reason the RD program's a little fuzzy. So tell us about sort of that transition.
Yes, I mean, if you think about the MVP program, it's often you're quite technically focused. And I was probably somewhat of an exception there in that, I was like a magpie. Yeah. I'd go to whatever was shiny. The Microsoft RD program is a much smaller program. So there are a few thousand MVPs. There's about 160 Microsoft regional directors. And the Microsoft regional directors tend to have a broader technology understanding and often tend to be engaging with business folks as much as with technologists. And in some way, we sort of help to provide some of that bridge from the community back into Microsoft at quite a senior level. So we have a number of very senior execs who sit on the distribution lists that we communicate on. Right. And it's a pretty good way for the community to feed reasonably open and honest feedback back into Microsoft.
And I've heard there's times, because I know our CEO sees some of the RD feedback, and I think he met with them at the last build, and they were surprised that a thread came up. He's like, yeah, I saw this thread from the RD list. This is something that's very important to our manager.
Oh, absolutely. Satya, Soma, was running DevDiv, Scott. All those guys, hang out on that list and interact with us. So it's a really neat way for us to help take some of that community feedback back into the mothership.
Awesome. And so then from RD now, you're the DX lead. What does that mean specifically for New Zealand? What's a DX lead do in general, and then for New Zealand?
So, our team is really charged with helping New Zealand organisations, particularly sort of independent software vendors, to build, grow, and really excel with their businesses on top of our Microsoft stack.
Right.
Be that Windows, be that Azure, and so forth. So we work really closely with software application developers, both small startups and really large organisations, to make sure that they have both sort of technical assistance and business assistance from Microsoft to get the best out of our tech.
So what are some things that DX is going to do with you, obviously in charge here, or does, to help them have success? Because obviously we're in an interesting place in technology where we're not getting rid of boxes, we're just replacing them with computer boxes somewhere else.
Yep.
The days of us unwrapping sort of this shrink-wrapped software that we were so excited to do, we're not going to be putting that into our machines really anymore. What does DX do to help technology or companies here embrace this technology?
So I think one of the interesting things that I've been thinking about, I spent a number of years working in professional services.
Okay.
Not as a lawyer,
Right.
as a technologist. And it's often been a challenge for professional services firms to make that pivot to being an ISV. Okay. Because there's that tension between knocking out chargeable time and sort of the ISV mission of selling software often at a much lower margin and supporting that. As an integrator, it's very easy it's easy to sell something twice. Because the customer's kind of expecting, lots of hands-on support,
Sure.
and they're prepared to pay for it. It's easy to sell something 100 times because you have the economies of scale
Sure.
to go and do a full support motion. And then in that fuzzy middle area, it can be challenging because your customer expects boxed software pricing or SaaS software pricing.
Sure.
But you may not have the scale to support it. And I think one of the things that the cloud's letting us do is lower that barrier, lower that support barrier, lower the sort of the management and operationalization barrier, which means that more integrators are going to be able to take the IP that they build up in their businesses and in the engagements with their clients and take that out to market.
That's an interesting perspective that maybe I haven't heard that much, because most self-funded sort of groups that eventually become ISVs almost always start out as consultants. And they find that there's this thing that they're doing over and over, and they try to weaponize it, so to speak, and productize it. And there is this weird gap.
Yeah,
right?
It's challenging.
And so what are some things, like let's just say someone's watching right now in New Zealand, they're like, hey, like I feel you, I'm in this weird gap where we're we have some guys and gals doing some consulting and we have some guys and gals making this product. How do you move sort of into that sort of a lower cost software, lower margin, but more volume? How do you do that? What are some things that they can do to do that?
Come and have a chat with our team. Let us help explain to you a little bit about BizTalk and some of the incubation programs that we offer to help you take advantage of our platform. We're also quite focused on really supporting that ISV ecosystem across all of the subsidiary businesses around the world.
Right.
So having, our Microsoft salespeople who engage with customers, making sure that they have an understanding of ISV solutions, making sure that they have an understanding of the sorts of fantastic tech that we've got built on top of Azure, built on top of Office 365 that they can take into their customers to use.
And I like that approach, right? Because there's no way to do a general prescription across all ISVs, because they're all doing different things. They might have a range of different products that they may be able to use. Now, is this assistance that they're going to get something that we're just going to go do? Is it consulting? Is that part of it? Or is there just someone going to show up and be like, hey, think about it this way?
It really is, it's advice.
Yeah.
So we've got both business and technically focused folks in our team who can help with advice, help to make connections, into Microsoft and into other organisations who we work with in the New Zealand community.
Sure.
Startups, incubators, and so forth.
So if you have any questions, please submit them below. We're going to take as many questions as we can, so make sure you get those in. And as we transition a little bit into sort of New Zealand, I love how you're talking about sort of what DX does. I'm also a part of DX, if you may or may not know. Tell us a little bit about how long you've been here in New Zealand, what it means to you, what are some of the technologies, what are some of the spaces, verticals that sort of exist here that could benefit from these kind of transformations?
So I've been the Chief Technology Officer of a company called Intergen. So we would be, probably the largest of the Microsoft-focused integrators in New Zealand. And I was a major shareholder in that business. So after college, I built a company building applications on Windows Mobile.
Nice.
Sold that to Intergen in effectively an equity swap transaction. And then we built Intergen from about 150 people when I joined to about 450 when we sold it to a listed Australian firm. And during my time at Intergen, I continue to build our close relationship to Microsoft. So we built up a business actually based up in Redmond that does a lot of work for Microsoft, building up many of their sort of early adopter training content and many of the big keynote demos that you'll see at big events. So if you go to one of the big 10 to 20,000 person Microsoft events around the globe, there's a pretty good chance that we've built one or more of the big technology showcase demos that they use at that event. And you know, I sort of incubated that business on the long haul commute, you know, flying back and forth between here and Seattle. And then we started an office there, and I spent the last 12 months actually physically living in Redmond, running that office. So
you have a sense for what it takes to go from idea to ISV to even in more companies, and so that experience, how does that inform sort of what you tell other companies when they're trying to make that transition?
I mean, I think for me it's been able to bring both a technical understanding as well as a business understanding. You know, far too often as technologists we can have a fantastic idea, build a fantastic product, and actually not understand the hard bits going in selling that. You know, and so we've had some opportunities as part of Intergen to spin out some businesses. You know, so we spun a business out called we spun a business out called Action This, that was a task management application for Microsoft Outlook.
Yeah.
And that was not successful. But as part of building Action This, prior to the cloud and running and hosting Action This from down here in New Zealand, we ran into performance challenges. So we built some performance optimization tools for Action This.
Awesome.
That ultimately turned into another company called Aptimize. We raised some angel funding into that, built that business, and then sold it to a company that's on the NASDAQ called Riverbed.
Awesome.
So that was pretty neat. We've actually rolled a couple of other businesses out of Intergen as well. So I've got an understanding of I am a technical person.
Right.
But actually a bit of a business understanding. So what's it like to go and raise capital? What are investors going to be asking? You know, how do you make sure that you have an investable proposition?
So you are also involved in New Zealand, specifically where you live. Tell us about sort of your involvement in sort of New Zealand itself. Tell us about that.
So when I went to high school, I was an enthusiastic whitewater kayaker and a mad keen mountain biker. And,
nice.
We used to, one of my fantastic school teachers used to drive us from Wanganui to Rotorua to go kayaking. And with sometime again, that sophomore year of high school, I decided at some point I wanted to live in Rotorua. Rotorua is about 2 hours south of our largest city, Auckland. Right. Be top 5 place in the world for mountain biking. There's amazing whitewater kayaking, fishing, and so forth. And so about 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to actually move there. So I bought a house in Rotorua. It's a fantastic place on the lake, you know, wonderful and pretty damn cheap.
Yeah.
You know, and I was able to, you know, go and live in the place that I'd always wanted to. And you know, I think that one of the things about technology is that it unlocks opportunities for us to grow our regions in New Zealand.
Right.
Now, if we look at New Zealand and we think about, you know, what is our comparative advantage, right? We grow fantastic grass and therefore feed all our dairy cows and make great milk and cheese and dairy products and so forth.
And there's a lot of sheep everywhere.
And it's a place that people really want to live. And to take full advantage of that lifestyle comparative advantage, we need to make sure that we equip and grow our regions. And so another thing that I'm going to be really focused on with our team here at DX New Zealand is making sure that we are looking to unlock opportunities for people to build these software businesses around the whole of New Zealand.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. I was recently, well, a couple months ago in South America, where perhaps they don't have many of the economic opportunities, but the cloud has lowered the barrier to entry, not just for those that are maybe don't have as much economy, but even for those that maybe locationally feel disadvantaged because they're far out. Tell us about New Zealand as a whole. What are sort of the industries that people, if they're in, can take advantage of the technology that we're discussing? I
mean, I think a place where we've not taken as much advantage of technology as we could is in tourism. So, you know, obviously our big sectors are dairy and agriculture, horticulture, more generally primary production, and tourism. And I think there's huge opportunity to think about tourism and the way that we can bring technology to tourism. One of the people in our keynote this week, Angie Judge, from a company called Dexhibit. So they're building a fantastic business, and I've seen Angie grow her business from startup, right, to now, landing in some pretty big global museums. So they've taken technology into the museum tourism area.
That's awesome.
And they've been able to do that from New Zealand because the cloud doesn't just lower the barrier to entry, it lowers the barrier to explosive growth.
Right.
And that was always it means that you can be far more capital efficient. And when you think about funding your business, equity is the most expensive form of capital.
Sure.
I do a little bit of angel investing, and an angel and a VC expects a large return. Equity is the most expensive form of capital. So being able to lower those capital requirements in the early stages of your business as you prove it out and as you take those first sort of explosive growth steps, lets you retain a bit more control.
Yeah.
And lets you retain a bit more of the upside.
And it also lets you retain sort of your ability to be where you want to be, do what you want to do. And so it's sort of a democratization, so to speak, of technology.
Yeah. And so I'm actually lucky enough to, I sit as one of the board directors of the Rotorua Economic Development and Tourism Organisation. So our district council has unified its subsidiary organisations that look after economic development and tourism, because we are really a tourism destination. And the thing that really interests me about that is the opportunity to grow the regions, but also to reach out and help people grow businesses in some of our less privileged communities.
Sure.
Rotorua has got a large population of people who, may not have done so well economically over the years.
Sure.
And I think there's a huge opportunity again for us to use technology to help them realise their potential.
That's amazing. And I think obviously our mantra, it's on our name badge, it's on our badges, is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. Let's talk a little bit now. We have about maybe 10 minutes left. What are some of the technologies that you're most excited about that Microsoft makes that are going to enable this transformation?
Yeah, so let's riff on some. I think some of the stuff we showed in the keynote, the cognitive APIs.
Right.
So the cognitive machine learning it's blown up, right?
Yeah.
I did machine learning back in the 90s. I often joke I've been doing machine learning since R was S.
That's right. I remember
because funnily enough, the R programming language grew out of Auckland University.
That's right.
Robert Ehaka, Robert Gentleman. So
That's right.
Pretty close to my heart, and obviously pretty neat to have something come out of New Zealand. So machine learning is blown up, but the cognitive APIs are interesting to the extent that they really are only something that could be built by an organisation like Microsoft.
Of course.
So they are pre-trained machine learning models trained on an utterly enormous corpus of data.
Like a ridiculously.
Right. And the only way you can get that enormous corpus of data is if you run one of the global search engines. And,
right.
There's probably only a couple of folks
probably
doing that. Taking that corpus of data plus being a hyperscale cloud provider, that really is, what it does is it gives developers access to the value of that stored data.
Sure.
To APIs that are able to deal with natural language processing, that have understood how we communicate by observing the real world.
Yeah, and what's amazing is that this sort of trove of knowledge, we're sort of, again, like weaponizing or productizing in a way that anyone can use it. Have you seen anyone use these cognitive APIs to great success, or is there something that you envision with these things happening in the future?
Again, if we talk about the power of technology to really change people's lives, so one of the examples that we showed in the keynote, in fact, Nigel Parker, who ran DX in New Zealand prior to me, showed it in his demo, is the use of the cognitive image processing API,
right,
to help people with blindness. So the ability to include that in some sort of wearable device. In this case, they were using wearable glasses, and then stream that content to the cloud, process the content in the cloud, and then stream back information about what's seen in the image.
Right.
Right? And again, by virtue of having trained these APIs on such an enormous corpus of data, we end up with a very, very powerful solution that can literally look at things in the real world, understand what they are, and be able to read that back to that person. So that's pretty neat.
And I love the idea, like Satya and some of the keynotes and the Ignite in the United States and some others has been talking about the democratization of artificial intelligence. How does cognitive services sort of help push forward the idea that machine learning and AI is for everybody?
I mean, data scientists are like rocking horse poo. Very, very hard to find.
Yeah.
But in fact, I do actually have a couple of pointers here. The way that the cognitive APIs democratize it is twofold. One is it's much easier to consume.
Of course.
So you actually don't need to understand the mechanics of how to build and train a machine learning model. But two, it provides people with access to the value of that massive data set.
Right.
Which again is something that really only a couple of organisations in the world have in their sort of power to be able to work with. If we go back to my rocking horse poo,
Love it.
I often talk to people about I think data science is a capability that's important to build inside your organisation. It's not something you should outsource.
Yeah.
Ultimately, your data scientist needs to understand the nature of your business, but there are some opportunities to go and find data scientists from unusual places. If you want to build data science tools, you need to go and hire folks out of top computer science faculties.
Sure.
If you want to hire people to do data science, you should go and find people inside academia who have been using the tools of data science. You need to go and look at the life sciences, at biological sciences, at zoology, psychology.
Geneticists have been doing stuff.
People who understand the experimental method, right, and people who understand actually how to use these tools in anger with real data sets. And there's a huge opportunity, again, for us as technologists, because we've got a kick-ass industry, right?
Yeah.
We've got great jobs, they pay really well, freedom, it's exciting. There's a whole lot of people, right, with backgrounds in working with data that we can go and tap and give an opportunity to work in our industry.
I love it. So we have about maybe 5 or so minutes left. What is? Oh, they're telling me 4 minutes left.
4 minutes.
What to finish up? What are some things, some takeaways that you want people that are watching take away about sort of what New Zealand is doing, how they can sort of use technology to better sort of everything that's going on in agriculture and tourism, and then secondly, what are some things that people can do to sort of start riding this wave of technology?
So we are a fantastic place to live and work.
I would have to agree with that. It's fantastic here, you guys.
And we are building amazing businesses, from down here in New Zealand. We want more people to come and live and work and enjoy our country. So if you're out there and that appeals, look into it. For folks who are looking at building a business, make sure that you understand both the technology and the business model and the business pathway that you're going to have to follow. Stand on the shoulders of giants. We've had some extremely successful ISV businesses start and grow here in New Zealand, on top of the Microsoft technology stack. So go and meet those people, hustle them. We're all a pretty friendly bunch.
Yeah, it's quite true.
And we've grown great businesses from around New Zealand. I know of some fantastic businesses here in Auckland, Tauranga, Wellington, Christchurch, Dunedin, New Plymouth, Masterton. There's some amazing stuff going on in Masterton. There are pockets of people who are just waiting to share their stories and help other Kiwi entrepreneurs out.
Awesome. Last thing, if someone were to visit New Zealand, what is something that they just absolutely have to do and see? Maybe a couple.
Something you have to go and see. So, I'll obviously give you one from my hometown of Rotorua. So there's an organisation down there called Canopy Tours.
Okay.
In fact, one of my good friends is the lead guide at Canopy Tours. And they have built an eco-friendly ziplining operation through the native rainforest of New Zealand. But as well as that, they've taken this forest area under their wing, and they're working on eradicating pests and so forth. So it's fantastic to go and do that, but also to get an understanding of the nature of our ecosystem and the work that we still have to do, to make sure that we really look after the world that we live in. So I'd go and look at Canopy Tours, and maybe if you're still into adrenaline after that, I would go and do the whitewater rafting down the Kaituna River, the highest commercially rafted waterfall, and might I add 10 minutes from my house.
Awesome.
Which will give you a thrill. It's about a 40-minute trip. It's really warm. It's just beautiful. And again, through an amazing slot canyon with our native forest over the top.
Awesome. Well, we're all coming over. Thanks so much for spending some time with us. It was awesome to learn about New Zealand and what we're doing here. We're going to go to the session right now.